everyone. Welcome back to Strange Minds 6. Today we have the book Strange Things Are Happening in Creepers, Volume 4, The Golden Goblet by Edgar J. Hyde. Before we go on, please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And without further ado, my dear friends, grab a snack, grab a drink, or sit back and relax. And let's get to this. Prologue. Dear reader, this is the story of how one ancient Scottish clan's survival was threatened by an equally ancient foe. In the modern world, with all its technology and money, it's easy to forget that there are more powerful forces at work for both good and evil. The ancient Celtic tribes of Scotland and Ireland, which, as you may or may not know, are called clans, were well versed in the ways of such magic. And this story will show you that they still are. Let me take you back to the place where our story takes place. Balmaconnell, to be precise, a small Highland village on the northwest coast of Scotland. The weather in Balmaconnell is fierce, even in summer, and although the sun often comes out in June and July, the cold never takes that as a hint to leave, and stubbornly stays around all year. The Highlanders of Balmaconnell say that the bitter cold is because of the number of ghosts in the air. It is said that the ghosts of those who made the Highlanders suffer are the coldest of all because they are soulless. Those ghosts are doomed to forever feel the pain and suffering that they once inflicted on the Highlanders when they were alive. They are forever hunted by the ghosts of Highlanders searching for justice even in the other world. And should the descendants of these evildoers ever come close to causing harm to the present-day Highlanders, then the ghosts searching for justice automatically warn those present-day Highlanders to be on their guard. This brings me to our tale. Chapter 1. Forgetting the Memory. Shauna MacDonald, age 13, lived in Washington, D.C. with her father, Karen, and her mother, Fiona. Her father was a well-known journalist at one of the biggest newspapers in the city, the World Examiner. He was very ambitious and hoped to be promoted to editor someday. Although she currently lived in Washington, D.C., Shauna was proud to have been born in Balmaconnell, the same village where her mother and father were born, fell in love, and were married. It was also the same village where her granny, MacDonald, lived. The family used to go to Balmaconnell every summer, but as Shauna's father's job began to take over his life, they gradually stopped going altogether. Because she missed Balmaconnell and Granny MacDonald so much, Shauna used to practice a sort of magic trick that her grandmother had taught her. The trick her grandmother explained was to lie down on her bed, her arms at her side and her legs straight, close her eyes, and think of Granny's favorite place in Balmaconnell, which was the old graveyard where she and Granny MacDonald shared many a story. If she was really concentrating hard, and if she practiced, then she would be able to transport herself magically back to Balmaconnell, where she and Granny MacDonald would talk as if they weren't thousands of miles away. Shauna was soon able to do just that, although it didn't work every time. It tended to work best just before she fell asleep at night in her bed. This meant that she was never really sure if she had been dreaming or whether she had indeed traveled back to her home village. If only Granny MacDonald had a cell phone, Shauna used to say to herself. Then I could call and ask her if she saw me in the graveyard. If she did, then I'd know I wasn't dreaming. Granny MacDonald didn't have a cell phone. Even though Shauna's father had offered to pay all the bills, Granny MacDonald never accepted money from anyone. She said she could almost live without it entirely. She did not believe in anything modern. She didn't even have a TV. That, thought Shauna, was her marvelous granny's one bad quality. However, besides not owning a TV, Granny MacDonald was the coolest person alive as far as Shauna was concerned. Her grandmother used to write regular letters to Shauna, describing the scenery, the wildlife, the ocean, and of course, the snow. Shauna had also gotten used to the fact that her grandmother did not believe in giving or receiving gifts. Granny MacDonald told Shauna that the gifts she would one day pass on to her only grandchild would be stories that her Granny MacDonald remembered, her father telling her, and that his father told him, and so on. She called this the gift of the secret memory. Shauna was very intrigued by this notion of the secret memory. Shauna's father, Granny MacDonald's son, had told his mother that he thought that the secret memory was just superstition, and by the time he was ready to receive it, he was not interested in it at all. Shauna's father preferred, said Granny MacDonald, to sell his soul to the newspaper he worked for. Before he started working there, he'd always promised to remember his roots and use whatever influence he gained to tell their story, because he was so far away from his roots. However, he had long ago decided that they were nothing but a distraction. In fact, Shauna's mother and father had gone to great lengths to forget their beginnings and had even changed their accents in order to fit in with their new American friends. Although she loved them dearly, this hurt Granny MacDonald very much. Chapter 2: The Secret Memory. Granny MacDonald believed that the characters in her secret memory stories were alive in her mind. This meant that while Granny MacDonald was alive, they were alive too. It was the duty of any self-respecting MacDonald from Balmaconnell to keep these characters alive. Not having anyone to pass on the secret memory to meant that these characters would die when she did. You are probably wondering who these characters are. Let me explain. These characters are ancestors, future descendants, angels, and demons who fought to protect the clan throughout the ages. Whether they were just figments of Granny MacDonald's imagination or real people – depends on whether you believe in ghosts and other strange creatures. Now, the secret memory could only be passed down through the bloodline from one relative to another. So, Shona was the last hope. Of course, Granny MacDonald feared that when she died, she might be held accountable for not passing on the secret memory. But this was not her only fear. What Shauna's grandmother was really scared of was that her own flesh and blood descendants would lose touch with the clan memory and their true selves and eventually lose the protection of the clan. Not only that, there was the possibility that they would betray the clan without even knowing it. Because of the dreams she had about her grandmother, Shauna, of course, was aware of all of this. She tried very hard to get her parents to take Granny MacDonald's concerns seriously. But her parents were not at all interested in listening to things that they'd spent years trying to forget. You know how parents can be. At this point in our story, Shona had not seen Granny MacDonald for 2 years, but there still remained a strong bond between them. Shona chalked this up to both of them being only children. Excuse me. In fact, the strong bond between Shauna and her grandmother had been deliberately nurtured by Granny MacDonald since the day that Shauna was born. 13 years earlier, Shauna's parents, Karen and Fiona, had told Granny MacDonald by letter that they were expecting a baby. Of course, as you can imagine, Granny MacDonald was insistent that the child should be born in Balmaconnell. Karen and Fiona, however, were equally determined that not even the arrival of a baby would upset their new American life. But when Karen and Fiona had to make one of their rare visits back to the Highlands to attend Karen's father's funeral, Fiona, only 7 months pregnant, unexpectedly went into labor. Baby Shauna was delivered by Granny MacDonald in her own home during the funeral wake. Of course, they were all delighted with the beautiful girl, and Shauna secured a special place in the hearts of all the people of Balmaconnell from that day on. There, I think that finally brings us up to date. Now you know the background to this wonderful tale. The next chapters will tell you the rest of the story without my help. Who am I, you ask? We'll meet again at the end of the story, and all will be revealed. And that ends chapter 2, my dear friends. Tune in next video to read about chapter 3, Dream Girl. This has been Ruby, signing off.